Hello everyone, with you Oniman. Today I will tell you about the anime Handa-kun. Happy viewing! Handa Seishu is an 11th grade middle school student who is fond of calligraphy. The whole school is captivated by his charisma. He is not benevolent and believes that the whole school hates him. He is protected from society by an invisible wall that Handa came up with. He is mocked by the whole school, and his shoes are constantly stolen by hooligans, as Handa thinks. One day, opening the locker door, a letter from a girl falls out of it, but he thinks it is a letter of bad luck. At the lesson, he decides to open it, but quickly changed his mind and threw it into the trash, suggesting to himself that there was an invitation to a battle near the school. Maiko saw this, she sent him this letter, and her classmate Yuri stood up for her. Handa thinks that the girl won't hit him in the middle of the class, so she decides to listen to Maiko. She invited him to meet after school outside the school, and he panicked. Handa begins to imagine all the negative episodes that can happen after school. Thinking about how to get out of this situation, he angered the mathematics teacher, who called him to the blackboard. However, Handa is smart in mathematics, and therefore easily solves the problem. But on the board, he wrote in black ink instead of chalk, which pleases his classmates. They think that he is cool, and all the girls are in love with him. Yuri and Handa exchanged glances. He thought she would beat him up, and so he decides to write her back about meeting after school. But she is also secretly in love with him, and so when Handa gives her a letter, she thinks it is a love letter. Yuri came out to read it, but it's all written in calligraphic characters she doesn't recognize. But among all the text, she notices the word Suki, which translates as like. Then she starts crying because she can't betray her friend and she doesn't know what to do. During lunch break, Yuri realizes that Kandi can't be given to her and she will fight for him. Handa went to the meeting place, but found no one there. Then he panics and does not understand what to do next. He decides to run away, but gathered all his will into a fist and came to the sports ground. He collects the views of boys and girls. They look at him with adoration. Maiko prepared a letter for Handa, but Yuri brushes the letter off Maiko's hands, saying she did it by accident. But after a couple more attempts to deliver the letter, Yuri starts fighting Maiko over Handa. Later, she tells him to run away from the site, as they are not worthy of him, and Handa is perplexed what is happening. He then leaves but is stopped by Maiko, begging him to read the letter, but he turns away and leaves. Yuri and Maiko are crying at the rejection, but they come up with an idea. They will learn calligraphy to get noticed by Handa. And despite the love and rivalry for the guy, they still decide to remain friends. The next day, the students elect the class president by voting. The only candidates are Aizawa and Handa. When the votes are counted, they end up in a draw, and therefore the teacher also decides to cast his vote, only he has not decided for whom he will vote. Handa tries to say that she doesn't want to be the head girl, and Aizawa suggested that they solve it in a game of rock paper scissors. Handa then took the opportunity to tell him that he would place the stone. However, Aizawa thought it was a hoax and ended up placing the scissors, thus losing the title of class president. Then Aizawa starts begging the teacher to play to 3 points, and Handa doesn't mind. They start playing and Aizawa thinks about what to bet since he's confused. He decided to bet 2 more times to put the scissors, thereby losing again. Handa decides to say outright that he won't be head girl since he has other things to do, but Aizawa thinks it's all out of pity for him. At that moment, Handa leaves, and Aizawa took this victory as a lesson in his life, and gave the position of head girl to Handa. But he has no idea what class rep is supposed to do, which shocked Aizawa. Next we meet Leo. He is handsome and works as a model, so he was on all the pages of fashion magazines, and all the girls of the school adored him. But Handa came into his class and everyone started to like him more than Leo. Then Leo decides to follow Handa and find out what is his secret to success. After following him, he finds nothing. But Handa remembered that he needed to buy food, and so he turned off on the way. He went to the store, which is located next to the modeling agency. At that moment, Leo thought that he wants to be a model and decides to stop him, because then everyone will forget about Leo. Handu is noticed by one of the major owners of the modeling company, but Leo does not let him get close, then he slaps him. He approaches Handa and offers to try on the jacket, saying that he will be famous, but Handa thinks he is strange and so he gave this jacket to Leo. At that moment, Leo realized why everyone loves Handa so much. The next day, Aizawa instructs Handa to deliver a letter to a girl-like boy named Akane. When he arrived at his home, he found no one. But a man with a bat in his hands approached him, who decides to scare Handa, but it turns out to be Akane. He has become more courageous and stronger in a year, but he never wants to go back to school. The reason lies in the fact that he was constantly bullied because of his appearance, and chased him away. Then he decided to lock himself up at home and not go to school. But on TV, he saw an advertisement for an inflatable ring that makes people jocks. Akane ordered him and was no longer afraid of anyone, and also took revenge on the bullies who mocked him. But Hand is not interested in his story. He wants to go home as soon as possible. He hands him the letter, and Akane thinks he wants to fight him. And when Handa puts a hand on his shoulder because his arm is numb, Akane thinks he's too strong. But suddenly a crowd of hooligans comes who want to get even with their enemy. Handa decides to hand over the letter and leave, leaving Akane alone to fight. One of the hooligans remembers Handa. There are many different terrible rumors about him that they run away in fear. Akane decides to open the letter and sees an invitation to school from Handa. It made him cry and it changed his mind. The next morning, Akane was already at school. He wants to be Handa's bodyguard. This day is a culinary day, and so the class will cook something delicious. They decide to make a cake, and Handa calls it a woman's job and refuses to cook, but his friends are a fan of him and let him do nothing. But Handa can't just stand still. He decides to make pudding. It was necessary to fill the powder with water, but for him it is too easy. He throws out the box and starts preparing his pudding. The guys start cooking off the recipe, which angers Isekai, and then they start a fight. But suddenly a fire breaks out, everyone runs away in fear, and Kondo takes a fire extinguisher and puts out the fire. At that moment, Handa leaves, saddened that he has set everyone up again. But his friends don't think so. They thank Handa for interrupting their quarrel. Later, they reminisce about the homemade pudding and decide to try it. However, it turned out to be not very tasty, but the guys continue to eat it, since Handa tried hard for them. Maiko's eraser falls in class, but Handa finds it and doesn't know how to give it back. He is afraid that he will be told something unpleasant in response, and comes up with different scenarios for himself. And he got the idea to give away his eraser and keep someone else's. However, when he checks the eraser, he notices the pencil lead inside and thinks it was on purpose and that everyone is against him. After school, he met up with his only friend Kawafuji to go shopping with him. While Handa was picking out ink on the bottom shelf, a classmate of his came, but Handa didn't want to be seen with Kawafuji so as not to cause him trouble, so he hides between the shelves. She bought some ink and left, and Handa was having a hard time getting oil. Sitting in a cafe, discussing calligraphy, Handa's classmate again comes in, who wants to buy his work, while he himself hides. He swore to himself that Kawafuji wouldn't get in trouble because of him. However, we are told the story of how Handa became such a private person. It turns out that Kawafuji received a love letter from a girl he liked, but it was dedicated to Handa. And then he jokingly said that there were rumors about him that he was an arrogant artist, which made Handa withdraw into himself and doubt society. But Kawafuji knows the truth, but doesn't tell him. An ardent fan of Handa loved him too much that he decided to be Handa. He looked like him, so he wore his clothes and learned all his moves. On his behalf, he writes poetry, but the friends of the real Handa know that he was never a poet, as they followed him, and therefore decide to find out the truth. And Handa at this moment is in stress, because he thinks that someone wants to set him up so that they laugh at him because of his poems. The boys find the fake Handa and Akane decides to avenge him. He flies to the ground, and says that he was only pretending, because he loves Handu. However, he has ugly teeth that give him away, and so he puts on a mask. The crowd of fans see Handa and start rocking him, but the fake Handa doesn't need it and takes off his mask, disappointing everyone. Then everyone learned about the existence of the fake Handa. The next day, someone took a picture of Handa giving flowers to a girl. This photo was scattered throughout the school and a lot of rumors went about Handa, and the girls did not believe that he had betrayed them all. During class, Handa had a suicide note written on her desk by Maiko. She loved Kanda very much and could not forgive his betrayal, and therefore went to the roof. Everyone was standing outside comforting Maiko, and Handa just walks down the hallway, cursing the noise. Maiko expresses all her feelings for him before deciding on this act. However, Handa enters the office to change his desk, but he did not notice Maiko. He decides to keep the desk, as this is his favorite desk, and he did not want another. And Maiko thought that he treasures this desk because of her, and she walks back into the school. While scrubbing the desk, she realized that she would love him no matter what, and would try to share him with someone else. She runs out to the toilet, and there she meets that girl. It turns out that this is Handa's mother, and the director called her to talk about him. Then Maiko beamed with happiness, because she had hope again. The director tells his mother that he needs to communicate more, and for Kanda it was just an educational institution. But he promises his mother to open up to people, and so the next day he still decides to talk to Akane. He felt cold and asked him to close the window. However, Akane misunderstands him, thinking it's a test, and smashes the window with a chair. And at home, he rejoices, tells his mother about his attempts. Handa and Kawafuji decide to go to the mall to have some fun. But Handa comes in disguise so that people won't recognize him. However, Kawafuji called Hasegawa's friend to introduce them to Handa. They have fun together. First we went bowling, but Handa can't play any game. He can't even hold the ball properly, so Kawafuji throws the ball for him and knocks out all the pins. The next game was darts, where Handa hits the center 3 times, playing it for the first time. And in basketball, Hasegawa stood out, as he plays on the basketball team. For each game they received toys. When they sat down to rest, Kawafuji leaves for coffee, leaving them alone. Hasegawa offers to trade comics, and Handa is happy to have a new friend. But high school students come up and mock Hasegawa. Handa decides to prevent this, and changes into her real appearance, scaring off the bullies with her look. He decides not to see Hasegawa again so as not to put him in danger. But they still exchanged comics, which calmed Handa. Higashino is an athlete, he runs the 100 meters in record time. However, he has childhood trauma. During the competition, Higashino got a stomachache, and Handa was the opponent. Then he lost to him, but he vowed to overtake him in the 100 meters race. He doesn't know how to offer Handa a run since he doesn't talk to anyone, so he decides to start a fake fire to make Handa run in fear. But he is too smart and covers his nose with a napkin and goes on the bottom. Then the coach encourages him, saying that he has friends and he needs to set new records. Higashino already agrees with this, but he sees Handa running fast and he ran after him. He has already overtaken him, when suddenly Handa swerves and Higashino does not understand why. He turns around and sees a dog, who later attacks him. A fortune teller appeared at school who predicts the future by hand. Handa does not believe in this nonsense, but she reads horoscopes, and then she is afraid of them. On this day, he was supposed to have a misfortune that brings good luck to another. And then he hears the conversation of the guys, and decides to help the fortune teller by giving his hand. She predicts loneliness for him and much suffering. Kanda is afraid of this, and the fortune teller realized that she still has somewhere to go. The test results came the next day. 3 of the class did not pass the exam. Then these 4 guys decide to create a Handa squad to prepare for the exams, since 2 of the squad did not pass the test. But Aizawa agrees to prepare everyone since he has first place among all. Then they think that Handa took second place, nobly giving up first so as not to stand out. At the retake, everyone was arguing about who would take Handa's place, but Handa himself comes. Everyone is shocked, because they did not expect that he wrote so badly. Everyone thinks he just forgot to write his name, but he's not that stupid. But Handa didn't really write the name. He then starts writing with a pen, making squeaky sounds, but everyone thinks this is Handa's tactic, and decide to fight him. Everyone starts to creak with a pen and rejoice at it. The results of the retake turn out to be positive, and the entire squad thanks Handa for this. Handa decides to go to the library for a book. The librarian is secretly in love with Handa, and even created a separate shelf for him with his favorite books. However, after Handa, a detachment arrives, and they say that the books need to be replaced, since Handa would like the library to have a lot of people. And after the replacement of books, the people really went, the librarian could not even rest. In the evening Handa comes to hand over the book. He points out that the cover of the book does not match the book itself. And then the librarian decided to replace all of Handa's books with ordinary books, and informs him that there will be no more of his favorite books and he will no longer go to the library. Handa thought that she kicked him out because of the book. The next day in class 11B in the biology lesson there should be a frog dissection lesson so that the children begin to appreciate their life even more, since the person has the same organs inside. Some of the students' parents complained to the principal asking for a lesson change, but the biology teacher could not allow it. Therefore, he asks Handa to collect signatures to make a petition, but Handa is against the dissection, as he considers it disgusting. He's already opening his mouth to say no, but Aizawa is ahead of him, saying it's a great idea and he'll take care of the signatures. However, no one likes the idea of dissecting frogs, and so everyone refuses. Then they decide to put the responsibility on Handu to make a decision. He wanted to say no, but he thought that everyone would laugh at him because he was scared, and his answer was yes. At the biology lesson, everyone was given a frog, the girls are squeamish about this, and the guys have already begun the dissection process. Handa doesn't like frogs, and when they give him a frog, he wants to go home. Having opened the jar, the frog slips out of his hands and he falls to the floor. Then everyone understood that he did not want the dissection lesson, but they thought that he did it for the sake of the class, and therefore they thank Handa. The next day, the school president announces the school's fall festival in honor of the school, which takes place every year. He was named after Handa, as the president is a fan of Handa. The class begins to choose a scene for the performance, but everyone disagrees. Then they put that responsibility on Handu. He was given 3 sketches, but he cannot choose them, because he is afraid of offending someone, and therefore he simply runs away from the class with fear. Classmates think that he is just overworked, and decide to combine all the plays into one. As Handa is sitting on the stairs, the school president approached him and asked him to paint signage for the event. Handa agreed so that he would not have any unpleasantness. And the president is shocked that she spoke to Handa himself. Arriving at the class, Handa was sat down to watch everyone, as they want him to rest, and everyone is preparing for the scene. Along the way, he met hooligans who asked the boy how to find Handa. At that moment, Akane arrives and Handa hints to him to deal with the bullies, but he does not understand his gestures at first. Then Handa decides to tell him directly, and Akane attacks the bullies. During the lessons, roles are distributed, the list of which was compiled by Aizawa. But many are unhappy with their role, and all the roles are already taken, so they will have to play their part. Everyone starts rehearsing and Handa just sits down as he will have a special role. There are a lot of different schools at the festival that present their ideas. But everyone is interested in the scene of Handa's class. And so everyone went to the cafe, where the festival will take place. They combined the plays Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare. Nearing the end of the performance, Handa was given the role of the queen, and when the door opens, Handa appears. He becomes ashamed of his dress in front of Kawafuji and decides to leave before reaching the end of the scene. And everyone just applauds for this wonderful performance. But then hooligans from another school burst in looking for Handu. They meet the fake Handu, thinking it's the real one, but he takes off his mask and they realize it's not him. He created the Kanda army and they will fight for him to the end. The fake Handu is tortured, but he doesn't say anything out of respect for him. But suddenly Higashino arrives and tells him where Handa is. The bullies head to the classroom, but a fortune teller predicts bad luck for them. She begins to put pressure on them psychologically, and they run away from her in fear. However, they still came to the stage where Handa was and rehearsed his words. They decide to wait for Handa inside, and at that moment a class from another school arrives and befriends Handa. They exchanged a couple of phrases and they start to fight. The rehearsing Handa, thinking that there is no one in the hall, shouts his words, and everyone stops. And everyone understood that Handa was right, which means a truce between schools. That's how Handa stopped a years-long war. The festival announces the winner for the best scene, and of course it's Handa's class. And the head of the class, that is, Handu, is invited to the stage, and he thinks that something terrible will happen on the stage, so he is afraid to go out. But having gathered himself, he puts on a crown, but Kawafuji comes out, and says that he is a friend of Handa. But no one believes in this. Then Kawafuji told him the whole truth, and Handa broke his invisible wall, and saw the real picture of the world. Then he took the crown and made it a common property, as everyone invested in this festival. Now Handa has made friends and is open to the world. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and press the bell so as not to miss new videos. AniMap was with you. Bye everyone.